Alrighty, 'tis a weekend, which means all expansions available today. Let's take a look. For the landscapes, we got Borrow, which could borrow some better art, and Approaching Army. I actually have this banned. Obviously, the Daily Kingdom does not respect your personal ban lists. The effect itself is nothing special, but why would you ever want to force an extra attack into the kingdom? That is lunacy. In this kingdom, Approaching Army will buff Corsair. That doesn't sound very important. And the thing that triggers it is River Shrine. So if you and or your opponent combine play River Shrine 5 total times, for the rest of the game, Corsair is slightly stronger. But I mean, it's still Corsair. So it doesn't seem like the most impactful Approaching Army of all time. What else? For draw, there's Sheepdog, Archive, Encampment. For villages, Encampment, Trashing, River Shrine, Mint, Bishop, plus buy, Peasant, Jeweled Egg, and most of the loots from Jeweled Egg say plus buy. And then on top of all that, you can advance your peasant up to teacher, and then you can put plus card, action, or buy on any pile you want to get extra villages and buys and such. Disciple itself is also a village. So my thought is that none of the draw looks amazing here. Archive is a good card, but you don't usually want to be playing with a bunch of archives for draw because you set aside most of your good cards and they get stuck out of play. Encampment is probably the best of the three here, but requires you to play with the gold and is kind of awkward. Sheepdog just lacks a good way to activate it in the action phase here. Like minting a jeweled egg doesn't sound great. I guess you could bishop a jeweled egg and trigger the sheepdog off the loot. And there's no good way to make sheepdog work here, I don't think. But it's a shame because it's a fun card when it is useful. So I think probably the answer is just play thin because the thinners are fine. River Shrine mainly, maybe mint on the right hand, and then just have a stack of highways. Seems like the end goal, and then some plus buy a few provinces at the end. The most natural opening to me, I would think, is River Shrine and Peasant. You want to get started playing Peasant early to get up to Disciple and or Teacher, and then you want to get started thinning. The risk there is they're both terminal. Maybe a safer opening could be Peasant plus Borrow for Archive, which uh, gets you cycling around to play your Peasant more often and doesn't carry the risk of terminal collision. I think the upside of Peasant River Shrine in the case they don't collide is high enough to take that gamble. Yeah, look at this beautiful draw. I could buy something or I could not buy something and then gain something over River Shrine. No real difference here because I think whatever I'm gaining is probably going to cost 2 anyway. Consider an innkeeper, I guess, for the warehouse effect. Next turn, if I find the peasant, I'm probably buying an encampment and a second peasant. Because I think I prefer an encampment. Yeah, I like this. I'll have 3 total terminals on my deck. Peasant, soldier, and river shrine, so it's nice to have 2 villages available. Right, in buys. Returning camp. Oh, that's actually kind of neat. I'm not sure if I've seen that interaction before. So normally, if you play encampment on your turn and if the encampment pile is empty, there's no way to get it back before your opponent gets the first chance to snag it, which can sometimes matter in games where encampment is the main card and you don't want your opponent to be able to grab it. Because it doesn't go back in the buy phase, it goes back after the buy phase. So you return it at the end of your turn, and then your opponent gets to pick it up if they really want it. But technically it triggers at the start of your cleanup, which is also when River Shrine's gain happens to trigger. So you can choose to send the encampment back first and snag it again with River Shrine. That's pretty rare effect. The only other way I can think of off the top of my head to get an encampment back on the turn you played it would be like you could improve a poorhouse into an encampment, and that triggers at the same time. But like even night phase cards trigger before the encampment turn. Anyways, that was a long digression over mostly nothing, but I thought it was nifty that River Shrine was able to regain my encampment there. All right, I'll take an archive. Just the one is good. It's a bit of sifting, gets me playing the fugitive and stuff quicker. Like I don't want too many of them. Uh, this is fine. I was thinking I've got a disciple coming in off this fugitive, so I really want to add a highway now because it'd be the best target. for said disciple. And I was contemplating just trashing 1 copper to hit 5, but I can just... Oh, the approaching army! It approached! I totally wrote that off. I was planning to borrow for the highway. I don't even need to borrow. I got an extra coin off my soldier. Wow. What an impactful prophecy. Okay. Annoyingly, my bottom 2 cards are the disciple and the highway, if I'm not mistaken. But that should be fine, right? Actually, maybe... What if... I was going to say disciple the highway, which could be the right answer. Alternatively, I could play the highway, disciple the river shrine, cash all 4 of the last 4 coppers, and then I would gain 2 things off the river shrine. So disciple highway plus play river shrine gets me 2 gains. A disciple river shrine gets me 2 gains. I get an extra river shrine, which I'm not sure is a net good thing. Maybe that's a slight drawback. But I get a little bit thinner. There's a slight upside. I think the difference here is actually much more marginal than it seemed. 1 leaves me with 2 coppers in my deck. 1 leaves me with a river shrine in my deck. Yeah, I guess I actually marginally prefer the 2 coppers over the river shrine. Okay, so next turn. It is early enough in the game that I do think it makes sense to turn this into a teaser. I've got a disciple coming in, so I'll have a village effect, which means I can play a teacher and a river shrine next turn. I'm also thin enough that I don't necessarily need to play the... Oh, I also have an encampment, don't I? Yes, I should add a terminal here. Let's add a peasant. And I will be able to play all of this, provided I find my disciple, which is actually 100% guaranteed, so this should be fine. Yeah. It's all working out. And what am I buying? Probably just 2 more highways. Need a second teacher, that's for sure. And I might just leave this peasant on peasant. I don't know that it's going to get to disciple before the game ends. And I think I value peasant for the plus buy more than I value soldier or fugitive. The UI getting a little bit wonky there. Let's say plus buy token on highway. It's not common that the plus buy token is the most important token, but I think that seems correct here. Risky archive play. I always run the risk of setting aside too many good things. My deck is super thin right now. Does it make sense to try to play the highways first, maybe? I was gonna go and do this. Okay, yeah, that could have gone better, but whatever. Three. Why bot is buying jeweled eggs? Why didn't bot? I'm confused in a lot of ways. For starters, why do you have jeweled eggs at all? Does not seem like a very good card here. But also, unless my own eyes deceive me, bot has plenty of money, right? It has a highway in play. It has 5 money from plunger and staff. It's buying cards that cost 1 coin. Why are you borrowing? I don't. Bot's hurting itself in confusion over there. Alrighty, province is going to cost 0 either way, so I think I maximize my... Actually, it doesn't really matter. I was going to say I get more buys out of discipling peasant, but yeah, that's actually true. Reverse this slightly. Okay. Yeah, this seems good to me. A bunch of highways plus buy on the stuff. Go to town. The bot, I don't know what's going on over here. Encampment doesn't seem terrible. I mean, it is draw. The problem is you have to play with gold or plunder, which is just a big drawback. I'd rather just buy the encampments periodically and let them die. The thing that's most confusing to me is these jeweled eggs. I don't know. Jeweled eggs seems terrible here. Like, but you value it's if you want the plus buy, I guess it's fine. Like if you already have the highways and you want plus buy, jeweled egg is non-terminal, which is something to its credit over peasant. Peasant can be discipled for additional buys, and you can advance it if you want to. So like those are competing with each other for plus buy. I could see scenarios where you pick up a jeweled egg just for plus buy. But loots definitely do not matter here. And going out of your way to trash the jeweled egg suggests the bot, I think, had a very inaccurate conception of what the best payload was here. Oh, and before I forget, I made a new Dominion themed crossword puzzle. I'll put the link in the description for anyone who wants to try it, and a link to the Discord channel where you can check your answers.